So, Chanel, I always start these interviews by searching through someone's social media and finding a post that really resonates with me and then asking them to expand on it. Are you ready?
Sure. Uh-oh. But
For you, I found this post on your Instagram and you say this. At the core of the desire for significance is the lie that you are not good enough right now, as you are. This lie severs the soul from reality. I want to talk to you today about how we can heal from the life we thought we should be living or the life we thought we'd have by now. And it kind of sounds like that post that you have right here, which is that lie that there's nothing significant for me here right now. Can you talk to me about that? Have you experienced that feeling? What got you into this conversation as a whole with the women and stuff that you work with?
yeah, oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you chose that one of all the posts you could have chosen. Thank you, Lord, for that. Um, no, that moment really for me was rooted in the work that I'm doing with women with life planning, right? And so much of what I encounter with real women in therapy rooms and in, life planning rooms is this idea that their life as it stands is not good enough. And they're constantly receiving this message of I'm supposed to be other. And so there's this constant dissociation from the life that they're presently living and this perpetual desire to be someone else, to look a certain way, to have certain things that don't belong to them, to be in this like other state. And I think that inability to actually inhabit their own skin has, for me, as kind of the guide in the room, and then certainly for me personally, as the person experiencing it as well, I think I've just been so heartbroken to see the way that they're missing out on the beauty of their ordinary life and how unable they are to actually live with more meaning and with more joy because they can't see what's right before them. So I think that lie that we're not enough or we don't have enough or we're not doing enough, our whole like abundance seeking mindset culture, right? I think that's really a lie that we're supposed to be chasing something else rather than I want to be in a place where we don't live out of scarcity. We recognize that what we have right now is sufficient. And how do we actually come to both honor what we have now and then to elevate and amplify the good that exists in our life already?
And where do you think this does come from? Because I resonate with this completely, with that idea of constantly feeling like life starts for me over there and then not living what I have right here. Who is teaching us this? Where are we learning this?
Yeah, it's all of us, right? I want to there's a part of me that wants to go like it's the media or something, right? It's like the technology people. I feel like I write in Life Starts Now, my book, about this concept of dissociation. And it's something we talk a lot about in therapy. And it's kind of that out of body, kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies experience. But when you're feeling like I'm here, but I'm not here. And I think that we have a regular habit in our culture now of not being present in our current lives. So we do all of these things all day long that take us out of the moment. We pick up our phones and we're looking at text messages. And so I'm not having a conversation with the person who's sitting in front of me. I'm not being present to what's happening at my desk or, in the car as I'm driving. I'm thinking about what this other person said in another space for another time. I look at social media and I'm scrolling through everybody else's lives, or I'm posting about moments of my past or moments of my future that I'm anticipating, but very little of it is honoring my present experience. And so I think that pattern of like habituated dissociation, sorry, it feels like a too much of a term.
There's no quiz. There is no quiz on this, friends.
Right, right. You all get an A already. But there's that idea of that constant dissociation we're experiencing, I think then leads us to feel like, at least what I hear women say, because that's who I mostly work with, women wake up and they tell me, I don't know who I am. And I'm like, well, of course you don't know who you are. You haven't spent any time in your own life. How can you possibly know who you are? Right. So I think it's a little bit of technology. I think it's a little bit of what we've normalized as the way to live. It's even now, post, not post, but in the midst of our pandemic, I will say, like, post pandemic starting and the way that we've shifted in our lifestyles, we have this interesting um, combination of parts of our lives, right? We're like working remotely. So we're at home, but we're not at home. All these things that have kind of reinforced that idea of not being present.
Wow. There's so much here that we could continue on because I totally agree with you with the cell phone and how it's constantly making us feel like actually what it is training us to believe that this isn't enough because that's why I need the apps, right? There's always something else better happening out there. But then what's happening to us inside? So what is like the first step for somebody who's listening right now and they're like, I want to live my life. I want my life to start right now. What's the first thing we can do?
Yeah. So I think first, I always say that we can't treat what we haven't diagnosed, and we can't diagnose what we haven't assessed, right? So I think it all starts at the point of doing an audit of your life. That's where I often start with clients, is looking at, how am I actually spending my time? Like, is this true for me? So I would take a beat and actually look through a typical day in your life and go, how disconnected am I really? What is this? How does this show up in my life? And then if you can, acknowledge what I think most people will, that we all do it all the time. So you're not an anomaly. We all have these moments of disconnection. I think hunting for a radical focus and a radical commitment to being present in your own life in some way. So I have, throwing out a suggestion, I'd say that, like, I have a practice in my life. I call it my Reclaim the Morning practice. And it's how I start my day. I know that once I get off to the races, I'm going to be pulled into everyone else's story. So I try to make sure that I start my day in my own story, and that I focus on my own voice. I amplify my voice so that it's the loudest one in my own life. And secondarily, or not secondarily, but alongside that, amplifying what God is telling me in my life, and use those two things to guide me and set my priorities. And then I'm able to move out into my day and all the demands, because I know that is a sacred pause that's kind of necessary in my life.
Okay, you just said something that made light bulbs go off in my brain. For how many of us is our own voice not the loudest voice in our lives?
What?
What do we do with that? How do we reclaim that to even know what our own we the first thing we do when we wake up is check our phones. So I'm being inundated with tons of other people's voices constantly telling me what I should be pissed off about, what I should be sad about, what I should be happy about. And how often are we checking in with our own voice?
Yes. Yes, and it's you're a communications expert, right? So it's like, in the space of whoever's got the mic, they're speaking the loudest, right? They're the ones that are shouting for us, and we kind of relinquish the mic all the time in our life. We let other people speak. And so you're right, we check our phones, and so then, Instagram tells me what I'm supposed to feel, right? What all of my I often have gone, I had this really funny moment. I was living in New York City, and I was working in Midtown. I'd gotten to work early in about the 20s. And from the 20s, you can see the Empire State Building. And so I was looking at the Empire State Building, and there was this helicopter circling around. And I remember thinking, there were all these sirens and then the helicopter. And I was like, something is going on. And in the city, this is always, there's always something. And I remember thinking, should I be afraid? And grabbed my phone instinctively to check social media to see what was going on. And it was an interesting moment of, like, I literally disconnected from the fact that I was physically in a space next to other people. I didn't assess the situation for myself, and I actually chose to go, how am I supposed to feel about this? What should I be thinking about it based on what Instagram is telling me or Twitter is saying is happening in this moment? And I thought, that's such a great example of what I think so many of us do all the time. We tune into other voices and we go, you tell me how to feel. You tell me how to evaluate my life. rather than me setting that kind of evaluation or making that assessment for myself.
We're living as if that's true hours, and I mean, our screens will report for us how much time we're spending on the phone, but it's hours and hours of our day.